Morning, folks. It's Steve here with another video for the new video series. This time I thought I'd do something a little bit different and kind of continue with the introductory trend, but kind of talk a little bit about something a little bit different. And this is kind of why I chose to set up Red Maple Technologies kind of at this point in time, yeah, give you a little bit of a flavor about the kind of decision making that went into the idea of starting a new business. To really get a good understanding of why I took this kind of time to start Red Maple with some colleagues of mine, it's two things kind of combined together. Number one, it's the series and set of beliefs and principles that I have as an individual, then combined together with the sum total of my experience in my professional career so far, and they kind of led me to a state where I thought it was time to try something a little bit different. So to jump right into it, in terms of the kind of principles of who I am, I think there are a few things that I believe very strongly in. So the first is this concept of service. I was a kid that listened to too many Kennedy speeches when I was in university, and so I love this concept of people serving something greater than themselves. So there's the first element is the idea of serving other people, serving some kind of ideal or concept. Secondly, I'm a big believer in society, and furthermore, I believe in everybody's role and responsibility in the contribution to the society that they're in. You know, I live in a Western society that's capitalist based, and so I very much believe in me having to give some kind of contribution back to that society. And then finally, and this is a little bit selfish, I like building stuff. I like building something out of nothing. I like applying knowledge to create something, especially something that has value for other people. Going back to that service concept again, I've got a saying that a lot of people will laugh when they hear this because they've heard me say it so often. But there's nothing as inspiring to me as a blank whiteboard. I love the concept of just having a blank sheet of paper and being able to kind of put ideas down and then turn them into a reality. So with those as the kind of framework for kind of who I am and what I believe, at least in terms of this, then we start to look at the kind of sum total of my experience. And again, without getting into too much detail, I worked for government for the first kind of 14 years of my career, and then I worked for a big American shareholder-led organization for another 5 years. And again, I'm not speaking ill of either of them. These are the experiences that I found. Both were very rewarding and fulfilling careers in a lot of ways. But I learned a few things in that experience. And coming back to those kind of principles, I found that, especially in business, there were a few things that I was viewing as shortcomings. And again, I can get into the detail of these in future videos. But to kind of give the headline statements, a lot of modern organizations, especially publicly traded shareholder kind of led and owned organizations, I found that the organizations themselves weren't kind of given the best platform to perform because they were in some way shareholder led, and they were focusing on relatively arbitrary metrics of success that are kind of very finite bounded, when in reality being in business is an infinite game. That's a Simon Sinek kind of thing, so thank you, Simon. But I found that the focus was on creating shareholder wealth rather than creating value for everybody who's involved in the journey. I found a lot of internal politics. To really get ahead and to be successful in the organization, you had to play the politics game, and I didn't really like that, if I'm honest. I found in both places people were focused very selfishly on, and not everybody, by the way. I worked with some amazing people in both organizations, but I found that a lot of people tend to focus very, very firmly on themselves. They don't kind of like the concept of serving others. They like the concept of serving themselves in either building their own wealth or their own kind of profile in the organization, and kind of rigid hierarchies of this person is more important than this person because they're higher up in some kind of artificially created construct that is an org chart, which I didn't really like. And fundamentally, and this is a kind of point that really didn't work for me, was this concept that that the people were in the organization to build the wealth. The people were there, the employees were in the organization to build the wealth, and specifically the wealth of the business and the shareholders who own the business. I'll come back to that because I fundamentally believe something different. So with those as my principles, and that is the kind of sum total of my life experience so far, then myself and my business colleagues, Rob and David, we founded Red Maple on a series of principles and with a purpose. So in terms of this series of principles, and what I'll do is in future videos, I'll dive into each of these subjects in terms of the principles and then indeed the purpose. But just in terms of headlines for now, firstly, it's okay to be nice in business. I think a lot of people hide behind business as a means of kind of behaving slightly inappropriately and say it's just business. I don't like that. I like the idea that we're going to try and be nice to everybody that we engage with. Servant leadership. I believe very firmly in serving the people who work in the organization, everybody that works around me. I believe as the CEO, my job is to serve them, not the other way around. Again, I'll get into the details about these a bit later. I found that in a lot of organizations, and I worked in big organizations, so it's kind of understandable, but I found there started to be kind of tribes inside the tribe, and then there were politics inside of all of that. And so a lot of focus became on kind of defending yourself from internal threats rather than focusing on external threats. In my opinion, the big bad wolf's outside the business. We should all be pulling in the same direction. I think a lot of people think that it's, I spoke to a friend once and they said, oh, I said, how are you enjoying your job? They said, oh, I love my job. It's an amazing job. And I remember thinking, wow, that's really cool. It's pretty rare to hear that. And then I thought, that's not cool, right? Like, why is it a privilege to go to work happy? It shouldn't be a privilege. It should be everybody's right. You spend a lot of time working, usually at someone else's behest. It's your right to come to work happy, and it should be everybody's right to come to work happy. We really want to focus on always doing the right thing and using our ethics and our values as a means of making decisions, even if it means that we have to take a little bit of pain on board to kind of make that right decision. And then fundamentally, and I mentioned in shareholder supremacy organizations, the people are in the organization to build the wealth of the organization. We believe something quite differently. We believe that the people who are in the organization, who are creating the value of what that organization does, they are the ones who should be receiving a lot of that wealth. And so we have a saying, which is that the wealth is there to build the people. It's an important concept for us. Finally, our purpose. I mentioned before, I like this concept of big society. And, we are, Red Maple Technologies is a congregation, a coming together of some technologists predominantly. And so the idea is that we want to use technology to make society a better place. Now, we're not over-egging our own contribution. We're 6 right now, 6 people. So obviously that contribution isn't going to be enormous. However, it is a drop in the ocean, but it's our drop to give. And it's the way that we want to contribute to this project that is our society. That's it for today's video. Like I said, I'll get into the details of some of those kind of specific topics in later videos. Might try and do one a little bit later this week, but no promises. We'll see how the week goes. Other than that, stay nice to each other and be happy, and we'll see you next time.